Ladies and gentlemen, this is TVP World. You're watching World News. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and these are the latest headlines. Anti-government protests in Serbia continue in Novi Sad, where demonstrators opposing President Aleksandar Vučić have blocked the city's main bridge. TVP World's Balkan correspondent Pavel Chapkovsky is on the scene. Pavel, is there anything particular that you noticed during these protests?
Well, yes, the very particular thing that I noticed is a striking silence among the crowd. We are now next to the bridge in Novi Sad, where hundreds, maybe thousands, gathered, blocking the main bridge in the city. However, what you can hear around me is complete silence, and this is because these people have been gathering here to commemorate the victims of a tragic incident in Novi Sad that happened 3 months ago. And they are standing still and quiet for 15 minutes, 1 minute for each person killed in the tragedy. Let me remind you that 3 months ago, a part of a railway station bridge roof collapsed, killing 15 people, and that was the moment that sparked the movement, sparked the student movement with people protesting. And they are protesting what they believe is a corrupt state that captured Serbia, a state governed by the country's president, Aleksandar Vučić, and his political class. And the protests were initially started by students, but with time and perseverance, the protests started to engulf a bigger part of the Serbian society. Initially, they were not listened to, but with time, their voice became heard, and this week the Prime Minister of Serbia resigned, as well as the mayor of Novi Sad, in a bid to appease the protesters. However, that does not seem to satisfy them. They demand those responsible for the Novi Sad tragedy to be held accountable. They demand a reinstatement of the rule of law and maybe even the new elections. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Pavel, for your update. Really appreciate it, and please keep us posted. Meanwhile, prior to the moment of silence, Pavel had the opportunity to speak with some of the protesters. So let's see what they have to say.
We would like to achieve justice and uncorrupted society where we can live freely for our children before everything.
Okay, and today the protest ends, and what do you think will come next?
I expect that we're going to use this energy to achieve our goals. I don't think that this is going to end today. We have just started.
We usually don't spend nights out here in February, but there was a lot of people and a lot of fireplaces and everything, so we had fun.
And why did you do it?
Well, because we believe in justice and we believe in better future, and that's the thing that brings us all here.
There's a lot of other protests that are currently being planned, or I think are going to happen soon, because this is not the end for all of us. I think we will continue to fight for what we think is right, and yeah.
Thousands of people have taken to the streets in Valencia, Spain, protesting how authorities handled the deadly floods that hit the country in October. Demonstrators argue the region was not adequately prepared and that the response was insufficient.
Drums, chants, and traditional Valencian human pyramid performances. The number one demand of the protesters is that the president of the Valencian government, Carlos Mazón, resigns.
Let Mr. Mazón know that we are neither far right nor far left, but ordinary people from Valencia. We are against everything he has done.
Well, obviously he should resign because of the appalling management he showed during the storm.
Valencia was the worst affected Spanish community in the 2024 flood. People have been protesting regularly, calling for the authorities to be held accountable, especially the president of the community, whom many of the protesters accuse of negligence.
It's a shame that he hasn't resigned yet, and if he won't leave, we will kick him out.
The October flood caused by heavy torrential rains has claimed the lives of 232 people. 3 are still missing. The disaster has caused property damage estimated at more than 10 billion euros.
Grigory Meshechnikov, head of Slovakia's NGO Institute for Public Affairs, says that tensions between Slovakia and Ukraine are escalating. After Ukraine blocked Russian gas from flowing through its territory to Slovakia, Bratislava accused Kyiv of energy blackmail. More recently, Slovakian authorities claim Ukraine was intensifying and interfering in the country's internal affairs.
Slovakia and Ukraine is now in very sharp diplomatic and political crisis. It's a conflict, it's a dispute. Unfortunately, escalation happened after Prime Minister Robert Fico attacked Ukraine for its decision to stop transfer of Russian gas through its territory to Slovakia. Then Mr. Fico went to Moscow. He met with Vladimir Putin. Of course, in such situation in which Russia is still conducting war against Ukraine, it was considered by Ukrainian leadership as an unfriendly approach. And since the time we are witnessing the signs of escalation in relations between both countries.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says that Canada will respond to U.S. trade actions with 25% tariffs on $107 billion worth of American goods. His statement came just hours after President Donald Trump imposed 25% tariffs on Canadian and Mexican imports and 10% on goods from China, a move economists warn could spark a trade war, slow global growth, and reignite inflation.
Like the American tariffs, our response will also be far-reaching and include everyday items such as American beer, wine, and bourbon, fruits and fruit juices, including orange juice, along with vegetables, perfume, clothing, and shoes. It'll include major consumer products like household appliances, furniture, and sports equipment, and materials like lumber and plastics, along with much, much more.
Both Mexico and China have criticized the introductions of tariffs and vowed to retaliate. No specific targets or measures have been announced so far. Political scientist Alberto R. Coll told TVP World that Donald Trump's tariffs are being used as a bargaining chip in trade negotiations with America's biggest partners. Coll believes key members of Trump's administration, including the Treasury Secretary, will ultimately persuade him not to keep the tariffs in place for long.
I think he definitely intends to use these tariffs as bargaining leverage with both Canada and the United States. I mean, we know that Donald Trump, over the past 40 years, even before he went into politics, always has had this penchant for tariffs and this idea that U.S. allies, including friends as well as rivals, such as China, supposedly take advantage of the United States, by which he means they have trade surpluses with the United States. Donald Trump doesn't like the United States having trade deficits. He thinks that this means lower American employment.
6 people were injured in an oil refinery fire in Martinez, California. Residents were advised to stay indoors. Thick smoke was seen billowing from the fire. The local air quality management agency warned that the smoke contained harmful pollutants and urged residents to avoid exposure. The cause of the fire remains unknown. Kyiv is urging greater pressure on Moscow, while U.S. President Donald Trump has announced upcoming talks with Vladimir Putin. On Friday, Trump said the two leaders, quote, may do something significant. Meanwhile, his special envoy to Ukraine says Washington wants to increase pressure not only on Moscow, but also on Kyiv.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
It has been much more than 24 hours since U.S. President Donald Trump took office, and despite his previous pledges, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine remains unresolved. Trump has suggested that he is in talks with Putin, though he has neither confirmed nor denied whether the pair has already spoken.
Well, we'll be speaking. We'll be speaking, and I think we'll perhaps do something that'll be significant. We want to end that war. That war would have never started if I was president.
While Trump did not indicate what exactly these significant developments would entail, he told Russia to stop this, quote, ridiculous war on Truth Social last month.
If we don't make a deal, and soon, I have no other choice but to put high levels of taxes, tariffs and sanctions on anything being sold by Russia to the United States and various other participating countries.
But it may take more than financial scare tactics for Putin to stop his war.
Putin is fighting a war here for his place in history. He's fighting a war to re-establish the Russian Empire. He's not going to be constrained by a drop in GDP.
Trump's special envoy for Ukraine and Russia, retired General Keith Kellogg, has indicated that a realistic timeline towards peace in Ukraine could take months, but probably not years.
President Trump knows where to apply pressure, when not to apply pressure. But more importantly, he knows that he will create leverage with both the Ukrainians and the Russians.
He is, however, not the only one that has put faith in Trump's negotiation skills. Even the Ukrainian president previously suggested that he is hoping for his U.S. counterpart's support in bringing an end to the war.
Trump can be decisive. For us, this is the most important thing. His qualities are indeed there. He can be decisive in this war.
To date, Putin has indicated his willingness to negotiate an end to the war, but insists that Ukraine would have to acknowledge Russia's territorial gains. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has labeled the idea that Ukraine could fully restore its pre-war territory as misleading. He has echoed Kellogg's view that both sides would need to give something up in any negotiations.
That dishonesty lies in the fact that we somehow led people to believe that Ukraine could not only defeat Russia, but also destroy it, pushing them back to what the world looked in 2012 or 2014, before the Russians seized Crimea and other territories.
Zelensky has previously said that he would be open to Ukraine temporarily ceding territory to Russia to end the war.
From the Ukrainian side, it's not about territory anymore. This is all about security.
In January, the new American administration suspended foreign aid pending a review which would ensure alignment with its policy, which is likely to affect aspects of the Ukrainian state's operations.
The fact that we're not consistent in providing what Ukraine needs reflects the fact that we don't actually have a clear strategic objective ourselves. If we had a clear strategic objective that we wanted Ukraine to win or to be successful somehow, then we would have the right policies. There would be no disruption, even with a change of administrations.
Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, and it currently occupies about 1/5 of the country. For TVP World, Sonia Gatabishchan.
North Queensland, Australia is facing devastating floods. One person has died and authorities are urging residents to evacuate.
Whole neighborhoods in Queensland are underwater, and the situation is expected to get worse. 24-hour rainfall totals are expected to reach up to 300 millimeters in some areas, with more rain forecasted in the coming days. One person has died when a state emergency service vessel capsized during rescue operations.
There were 6 people on board the vessel. 5 people were recovered safely, but sadly one person was deceased. We understand the deceased member is not a member of the SES, but is a member of the public.
The flooding was sparked by a low-pressure system laden with tropical moisture, resulting in torrential rains. Authorities have urged thousands of residents in the affected areas to move to higher ground as the situation continues to unfold.
I'm asking Queenslanders to do all they can to make sure that you stay safe, and that means listening to warnings, responding as quickly as you can, helping out friends and family, and I'm very confident we'll get through this.
The disaster follows a series of severe weather events, including the once-in-a-century floods that impacted the Northern Territory in 2023, part of a multi-year La Niña weather pattern.
And with that, we conclude this edition of World News. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.